You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. Your voice would thrill a nation. Your face would be adored. You'd make a great sensation with wealth and fame, your reward. And if you should kiss...
Thank you, Doris. It is, in fact, time to do our new tradition, our newly minted tradition, which is a post-Oscars emergency news broadcast. This doesn't mean you have to go to the basement or anything. There's nothing bad is about to happen. Well, something bad could conceivably happen, but it's not like a tornado or something like that. You're going to be fine. The Oscars were last night, and so we've gathered together some of our favorite nose panelists here to talk about them. That would include Shawn Murray, stand-up comedian, writer, and the host of the Nobody Asked Shawn, SHAWN. I'm trying to do some SEO here, some search engine optimization podcast. Vivian Nabeta, who is sort of the queen of our Oscar coverage, and is also, in her spare time, director of digital marketing for Connecticut State Community College. Seymour is a writer, professional spectator, pop culture maven, and jazz geek. He's the mayor of our annual jazz show, and so much more as well. So, yes, we did have the Oscars last night. There were kind of surprises. I mean, maybe the truth of it going in was there weren't as many prohibitive favorites as there are in certain years. So, I mean, everything was either potentially a surprise or not a surprise. But I thought maybe we'd begin by just kind of going around the infield here and just getting everybody's general take. And Shawn, I'm going to have you get us started here, whether there's a high point you want to mention, a low point you want to mention, both, or just kind of a vibe check, however you want to play this, Shawn.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to start with a low point, and that was the third or fourth year in a row that Top Gun Maverick did not win Best Picture, specifically the test run scene when he does the test flight. Oh my God. It's a snub. No, I thought it was like one of the better Oscars of recent years. I thought Conan is like a no-brainer. He's just a great host. Like, he's such a classic song and dance man, Hollywood. He brings that energy. Like, he can roll. He does great bits, but even when a bit bombs, he like just rolls straight through it. Like, that was great. I thought generally there was good winners. Like, it wasn't like a Green Book year when it's like, what? You know what I mean? It was like, I think a movie that most people enjoyed. Like, even if Anora wasn't your favorite, I think most people were like, I'm not mad that won. A lot of deserving winners. A lot of hilarious. I thought the greatest moment of the night was when they were playing off Adrian Brody, and he said, "No, stop. I've been here before. You don't have to do that." And they stopped. Like, I didn't think anyone had that power. Like, in all my, maybe I haven't. I'm not. Has anyone ever done that before? To just like say, "No, you're not going to play me off," and just power through. Incredible. And then he said, "I'm going to be brief." Yeah. He said, "I'm going to be brief," and then he wasn't. It was twice as long as he was before he started the speech.
Well, yeah, I think we will probably have some debate about whether or not that was a great moment for Adrian Brody or not. I think other people have tried to talk through the music and maybe even gotten them to stop. I'm old enough to remember a night where John Huston came out. I forget what he was doing out there, but he seemed kind of hammered, and he talked for a really long time, and there was no getting him off stage. And he was John Huston, after all. So, Gene, Mr. Mayor, let's go to you next. High points, low points, argue with Shawn about something, however you want to do this.
Well, let me just start by saying that I kind of shocked myself last night when I realized that I've been writing about these things for over 30 years. And every year I've written about it. Well, when I haven't written about it, people have always asked me, "Oh, it's going to be a bad show. It's always a bad show. I always regret watching it." Of course you do. They're the Oscars. They're not going to be anything other than embarrassing, or disappointing, or abjectly whatever. It is what they are, and that's what they always will be. Except when Billy Crystal hosts, and then they're something different, I guess. But anyway, I was very, very happy with the results, even the ones that I didn't pick. I mean, I usually come out with my own Oscar blog because my public demands it, And
And by the way, if
I
people want to read Gene, you can search for the title. I can't say the entire title. Gene,
No, you can't.
Seymour Movies thinks that's Seymour. Seymour Movies thinks it's too old for this Oscars stuff.
Yes,
at
yes.
GeneSeymour.com. So continue.
Yes. Thank you. No, I had my record on my picks last night was 9-5, which was pretty good for me actually. But I kind of whiffed on a couple of the major awards. Obviously, I did not get Best Picture or Best Actress, but I was happy that I didn't get Best because I did kind of sort of want Anora to win. It was not my favorite movie of the past year. My favorite movie of the past year won for Best Animated Feature. So once again, I'm happy. As for the show itself, I mean, the reason why talk show hosts work better than most people, with the notable exception of David Letterman, is that people like Conan and Johnny Carson and Bob Hope was not a talk show host, but they all had one thing in common. They knew how to move past whatever bad joke. They know how to navigate failure in the immediate. They know how to get past a death spot.
I think that's especially true for O'Brien. O'Brien's default mode is I suck. I suck, and I'm funny, and I'm funny looking.
Exactly, and my and then there's my hair. And when all else fails, go to the air. So and he did all that, and it was fine. It was fine. I didn't expect it to be anything better than what it was, and to me, given the kind of mediocre history of the Oscars as a TV show, it was kind of above average.
Right. So fine has acquired a different set of meanings, I think, in our troubled age. But I hear you. So Vivian, queen of our Oscar coverage, Vivian Nabeta, give us your take or follow up on what these two gentlemen had to say.
Can I get Queen of the Oscars? Can I get that on a T-shirt?
You can have it tattooed, whatever. We don't control.
I think I'm going to agree with Eugene. It was perfectly acceptable. Like I wasn't screaming and yelling. I wasn't overcome with emotion. It was perfectly, as somebody I know would say, it was perfectly adequate. I think, there were a few, I wasn't surprised either about Nora so much in terms of winning, because you knew it was. I just know for me personally, I was, at least when it came to Best Actress, I was hoping for Demi Moore, but I love that Mikey Madison won. So congratulations to her. And if anyone has seen The Substance, perhaps, that's a nice little discussion there between Demi and then potentially a younger Demi winning. So.
Can I just say one thing about The Substance? I haven't seen The Substance. And so I was last night at the Hartford Oscar party with my friend Wolfie and my friend Carolyn Payne. I love Carolyn Payne to pieces, but she hates to go to the movies. And so this year, among the Oscar nominees, she had seen The Substance and then two of the animated movies. I think she'd seen Flo and then the Wallace and Gromit movie. But she was like hassling me about not having seen The Substance. I've seen almost everything else except The Substance. I don't think it's fair.
You should see it. I mean, I would recommend. I think it's certainly a different choice because of the kind of movie that it is, and it is definitely body horror, which is not known for. I mean, horror as a genre is not usually nominated, which I won't go on a tangent about my feelings about that.
I blame, first of all, we did a show that involved The Substance, and everybody who was on the show said they almost threw up during it. And Carolyn, as long as I'm assassinating her character even more, was in the bathroom during the chicken scene, whatever that means. So she didn't even probably see the thing that makes people want to. I'm having a hard time. Oh,
no, there was a lot to see. there. She's probably got a good stomach.
Okay.
But you let us know when you see it.
I'm faint of heart. That could be a little bit of a problem. Hey, let's go back to the Adrian Brody thing, and I want to hear from all of you on this. But Gene, maybe get us started. We've already heard Shawn a little bit. To me, that seemed like overplaying his hand. And as our friend Jim Chapdelaine said, if you're going to make him stop the music, you better have something to come back with at that point. And I didn't really think he had it.
Yep. No, I agree with Jim completely. I mean, he did kind of veer off the highway, and just decided, well, since I'm here, let me look around. Let me see if I can get some people to wave me off. Oh, there's a diner over there. I haven't eaten yet. This was the this was the nature of the speech he gave. And, I think what best summed it up. There's this critic friend of mine, Joe McBride, who wrote, you see, every year when you watch these things, you realize why actors need scripts at all times because they cannot improvise. They cannot make this stuff as they go along. And just about every acting. I mean, probably the best acceptance speech came from Kieran Culkin, and even that was kind of sketchy on some levels.
Well, yeah, although, that was a very interesting one. First of all, he got bleeped really early in the podcast. The show, the broadcast. And Vivian, I know some women who were uncomfortable with him using such a large and high and far-reaching platform to bargain with his wife about reproduction. And I know it's kind of a bit, but Vivian, I don't know. I talked to some women who found that very uncomfortable.
I mean, I could understand. I mean, I don't have children, and I could, but I would say I certainly wouldn't want to have a discussion about the possibility of having another child with an audience full of millions around the world. So I could completely see why somebody could find that uncomfortable. But it seems like from the relationship that they have, that she's, I don't want to, I don't mean it to sound off-putting, but that she's maybe kind of used to his antics. And at a certain point when they panned to her, she seemed to feel like, oh goodness, it's him again. But, but it also was meant, it also felt like, well, now I kind of have to eat crow a little bit because I didn't even think we would be here and I didn't think you would win. And now you won. And now everybody knows you want to have another baby. So people are going to see me at the after parties and say, hey, working on that other baby, which is very awkward. Yeah. Very awkward. None of your business.
Maybe not. These are Hollywood people. Maybe it's not awkward. I don't know, Shawn, do you want to go somewhere with all of that, or should we switch to something else?
No, I can talk about all of that. Just real quick on the Kieran Culkin thing. Well, not real quick, but I think the fact that he clearly seems like he has talked about his wife about the initial time at the Emmys last year when he initially brought it up and she was uncomfortable with that. They clearly have had a conversation since then, and she probably, it's like maybe it was uncomfortable, but I feel like they probably talked about it. And also, you just can't resist that moment. If you won the Oscar and she didn't think you were going to win, and that's why she agreed to a third, it's like, yeah, I'm going to go for it, even if that's probably in poor taste. It's like, maybe this is the comedian in me. And then also the comedian in me, that's why I love the Adrian Brody moment. It's specifically because he didn't have anything great to say after he used that moment to leverage this power he just gained. And then he just said, we got to love everybody, man. Vaguely. I'm not going to mention who isn't being loved or who's being hated. I'm just going to say love everyone after 15 minutes of trying to even remember that I wanted to say that in the first place.
I thought it was absolutely was a Dunning-Kruger effect moment where he said, I got this.
Yeah.
And then he's got nothing.
Absolutely did not have it.
So, yes. Nope. So you're loving it more as a fail.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to bring up, this is me being a little anal retentive, maybe, but maybe not. So let's just talk about it. If I have a pet peeve from this particular Academy Awards, and I'm sure it's not new this year, I just haven't thought it through very carefully, but I would say that Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain and Zoe Saldana in Emilia Perez are both co-leads. They both won Best Supporting Actor or Actress awards against people who in many cases are not that present in their movies, who maybe have, a quarter of the screen time or something like that. And I sort of feel like that's not fair.
Go ahead. This is something that's happening lately because, it's a problem of what they used to call, and I guess still do call, billing, in terms of where certain characters are in line with the story. I thought both those performances you're referring to, that one, I call them ringers because that's what they are. You're right. They are lead performers or dominant performers in what, in the context of the storyline, are supporting roles. And that's something that, the guilds have got to kind of address. I think the Academy's got to kind of address because they weren't the only ones. I could think of a couple of others, not just this year, but in the past, where that's been true. I think who was it God, I'm having trouble with names, but the guy who won for Whiplash.
Oh yeah, J.K.
I mean,
Simmons and Miles Teller
J.K.
were in that.
Simmons,
Okay.
that was the lead role. I mean,
Or
he
close to it,
owned
yeah.
that.
And
He
I mean,
owned that movie.
Zoe
And,
Saldana is, I think, arguably, except for the fact that the character, the nominal character, Amelia Paris, is played by someone else. Zoe is the lead of that movie.
I mean that song that won for best song, which I thought was a nice surprise. I did not think that was going to win. Even people said that was the high point of the movie. That's nothing without her.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a performance piece. That more than a song. So, yeah, there are a lot of cases like this, and I mean, I'm not going to adjudicate 100 years of Academy Awards, because we'd be here for weeks on end. But something's got to be done. That's something that has to be addressed somehow.
Somehow, it seems unfair. But I don't know. Maybe
Sometimes
go
a
ahead.
game of odds. Oh, sorry.
No,
I think
Vivian,
I cut.
go ahead. I was going to ask you. Go ahead.
And I think that sometimes it is a game of odds, because you put somebody in supporting and then you put somebody in lead, and you kind of make that choice based on who you think is the most likely, how you're more likely to win, as opposed to co-billing. Because there are times you do see, you're like, well, something isn't right here, but it's like, oh, well, we think that so and so has a better chance of winning in the supporting category, so we're just going to put them in supporting, even though an argument can be made that somebody is the lead.
Well, one of the most notorious cases of that. I mean, I think when Fences came around a few years back, Viola Davis was originally going to be placed in lead actress category, but I hear, I mean, I've not had this confirmed, but that Denzel Washington said, no, go for supporting. You've got a better chance of winning there.
Yeah.
And I think that was an example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's not the first and not the last. It's you certainly do see it, and sometimes maybe it. I think that all our talk of awards, and I think everybody's in this group, we understand that yes, that it is. People want to win, or people want to have a better chance of winning. This is not necessarily about always what's the greatest or what's the best.
Yeah.
And so people try to hedge their bets, as in any other thing,
Right.
whether we like it or not. But yeah, it isn't unusual.
You mean the Oscars isn't pure? I am absolutely
no.
shocked.
Oh, it's pure something. It's just not,
That's why I love category fraud.
Yeah. Okay. So, Shawn, we should talk a little bit about Anora, which did win Best Picture. And one thing that's kind of come up in the notes, and I think it came up in Gene's piece too, is, comedies tend not to do as well as dramas in the Oscars. And this isn't, like so many things these days, it's not entirely fish and not entirely fowl. But as an expert comedian, as a licensed comedian, say a little bit about how you see Anora and whether you do think it is, legitimately a comedy.
I think it's a comedy for sure. I think more of it is comedic than isn't, but it's also like it's in that gray area of a lot of media in the last 15, 20 years. It's like Atlanta on FX was a comedy in name, but like there are plenty of episodes where it's like the intention of any part of the episode wasn't to be funny. You know what I mean? There were entire episodes where like the whole point of it was that it wasn't funny this episode. You know what I mean? It didn't make it any less of a good show. I think the distinction, because this is not the Golden Globes, I don't think it matters. You know what I mean? It's I'm happy to see something like Anora able to win and not get like sort of pushed out of the conversation because it's not, Oscar baity enough, which I think, in years post Oscar So White and all that stuff, like we just got to see more movies like this, even in the running, you know what I mean? Like after Parasite, it's like, I mean, was it Everything Everything Everywhere All at Once won Best Picture, which is, I mean, that's purely a comedy. Even though it has dramatic moments. So I think it's a comedy, and I think more power to it, Yeah.
Mr. Mira, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I was the one who kind of disqualified it in advance because of the history of comedies rarely, if ever, getting Best Picture, with with the notable exception of Annie Hall, which has some dark or darkish edges to it in retrospect. And this does too. Again, I think that one of the things that was an advantage this year, among its advantages this year, well, let's start with the disadvantages. I do not remember a Best Picture winner having as much frontal nudity and erotica in its first 15 minutes as Anora. And I thought that was going to doom its chances with
that's really only because they recut Conclave.
Yeah,
but anyway, continue.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
No way.
But then I thought about it. I said, well, who is going to be offended by this? And well, people in their 70s. And I thought, well, I'm in my 70s. And I thought, maybe the demographic has changed. Maybe people have a bigger tolerance for this sort of thing than I had thought in the 30 years that I've been writing about this. So maybe there's a greater acceptance. Maybe the perceptions and maybe the audience's own perspectives on what makes a good movie is. I mean, when I see Sean Baker's movies like this one and the previous two, I think, God, John Cassavetes' influence is so pervasive right now in movies, as it has not been in most of the history of the Academy Awards. And people see this and they think, yeah, this is what real movie making is. And I think it becomes more acceptable to that demographic of the Oscar vote, or as acceptable as something like Oppenheimer, which was very much a classical example of Hollywood commercial filmmaking. I think this is an acknowledgement that the parameters for assessing not just the movies themselves, but how the industry sees these movies. And again, I have to reiterate, these are trade awards. They're not critical awards. These are how people in the trades feel about their product and themselves. And the fact that they decide this was the best face to put forward this year speaks volumes about where people have landed with movies these days.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading a piece by a critic in N+1 who was talking about how a lot of these movies seem to be almost meant to be dumped into an anticipated Kamala Harris era at the time of her presidency, where some of these marginalized populations would be looked at in a much more favorable light. So it's kind of ironic that sex workers and trans person drug cartel lords and stuff like that are here, kind of confirming all of Donald Trump's worst suspicions about the world and his most punitive impulses. But Vivian, I think the mayor makes a great point, that it is sort of a trade award to a certain degree. And I wonder if they're looking also to Nora and thinking, this dude made it for $6 million. And one way he made it for $6 million is he did a lot of the work himself. I mean, it's very rare for somebody to win 4 Academy Awards in one night, just for that we're going to that person. Walt Disney did it. And one reason that it happened was Sean Baker, in addition to writing and directing and co-producing this thing, edited the movie too. And maybe one of the things they're saying about it, Nora, and it's something that I feel, Vivian, is it's a very tight movie. It accomplishes kind of everything that it sets out to do. There aren't a lot of loose threads around at the end. And I don't know, I just react to that, Vivian.
Well, I mean, I think that something that kind of both of you said, or listening you talk about, Nora and its win. But I think for me, there's a couple of things that I think about that, and going back to that discussion about comedies and how they don't usually win, and it's a comedy drama. But I do think that there is a little bit of shift in our thinking about what prestige is, or what could prestige be. And that ultimately that is life, right? A lot of times your life is a comedy and a drama, and which one is more dominant at the particular time. So, but I also think of it in terms of when I look at the nominees, like looking at it as well as Amelia Perez, The Substance, and Honora. Those 3 movies, I wouldn't imagine even 5 years ago would be in conversation. So I think there's a little bit of shift in terms of how we look at movies and what kind of movies we can make, and the dominance in those particular cases of women in film. I don't think it's going to be a watershed moment per se, because I think everything is incremental. And I think it's also talking about the need for independent filmmaking and having more filmmakers, to your point, because he was able to do everything by himself. He had to. Because of that, you were able to have some creative control. And it also says that something that is made so small, so independent, can end up going up against a conclave and still have a chance of winning. So I think it's really about thinking about what a film is that is prestige, who can be a center of a film, what kind of person can be a center of a film, what kind of stories do people want to hear, and how you can still create quality work without a lot of money.
That is a really, really great point. I have to sort of stop you there because we're way over our break time. But yes, Sean Baker is like only 3 movies away from having shot a movie on an iPhone. So yes, think about it that way. All right, we got to take a break. You're hearing Conan O'Brien sing a song promising to make the telecast go fast.
Would I waste? It's such an audacious Now, for no good reason, Sandworm from Doom 2 playing chopsticks on the piano. Hey, check it out! Someone who's not even nominated, Dancing Deadpool! I won't waste time. He won't waste time. I won't waste time. He won't waste time. I won't waste time. He won't waste time. I won't waste time. He won't waste time.
When you were young and your heart was an open book, you used to say, live and let live. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. But if this ever-changing world in which we're living makes you give it and cry, so live and let die.
That is from last night's Bond tribute. I wish somebody who covers that song would just fix the prepositions in it, in which we live in. I mean, she has a chance to set things straight, and she doesn't do it.
Correct Paul McCartney? Never.
So joining us is Shawn Murray, a stand-up comedian, writer, and host of the Nobody Asked Shawn podcast. Vivian Nabeta, queen of our Oscar coverage and director of digital marketing for Connecticut State Community College. Gene Seymour, writer, professional spectator, pop culture maven, and jazz geek. Very quickly, Shawn, you sort of, I think, look at this long James Bond tribute as perhaps a violation of Conan's promise not to waste a lot of time. But if you want to say something about time management, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think on one hand, every year when people are like, the Oscars are too long, I'm like, make it longer. That's ABC's problem. It's not my problem. Like, I don't need everyone at home to be watching every second of the show because it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to watch as much as I want to watch. You watch as much as you want to watch. But at the same time, it's like, how many of these things have nothing to do with what's happening? Like, we're not here. Did James Bond die yesterday? Like, why did we have a tribute to, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, spoiler. But what was that for? And I love the treat. Like, I love, like, hey, we're going to celebrate the things about Hollywood. But like, why did we need to do 3 songs where every performer did more than one verse? I don't even understand. Like, if you're going to do a medley, you do one verse, you get out. I don't understand. And then the choices for who we're singing. Doja Cat is singing the Diamonds Are Forever. I don't get it. It's like, I don't think we don't have to cut those things out of the show in order to make the show shorter. It's just like, hey, how much time do we need to spend on James Bond? Like, are ballerinas dancing a big part of the James Bond lore that we needed to have that be a 6-minute sequence? I love Margaret Qualley, but like, that could have been 45 seconds.
So yeah, all right. So that was a good rant, by the way. That was well
Sorry.
done. Yeah, no, that was good.
Nice,
I
felt like Adrian Brody right there.
Yes, yeah. No, we tried to play you off, and no. I thought that was really good, actually. And and very true. And anyway, there's one James Bond song that, as far as I'm concerned, only Nancy Sinatra can sing. But that's a conversation for another day. We should talk a little bit. And so, Gene, one of our good friends, David Edelstein, this morning was very disappointed. Maybe it was last night. He was very disappointed that there weren't more opportunities seized to speak out about the current situation. Daryl Hannah said Slava Ukraine, and then Conan either improvised or came up with somehow a joke about standing up to Russians. That was kind of about it, except for, of course, the best documentary feature acceptance speeches. I don't know. How do you process that, Mr. Mayor?
Everybody has something to complain about in advance or afterwards. And the most frequent complaints over the last, I'd say, 30 years since the 70s has been, there's too much political speechifying at the Oscars. I'm tired of, can't really just shut up about it. They're actors, for God's sake. Well, this year, for some strange reason, people are saying, you're not talking enough about the way the world is. And it's kind of like, make up a mind, pick a lane, okay? Yes. I mean, I get it. I thought there was just enough of that. Actually, I really do. I think that the shot fired by Colin against Putin's bow was kind of like in the manner of, oops, didn't mean to do that, sorry, and stepped away. But of course, you're going to have somebody talking about a documentary like No Other Land, whose win was also kind of somewhat miraculous given its lack of a theatrical distributor. And so, yeah, they're going to talk about this stuff. Everybody else was kind of talking around stuff. I mean, some people wondered why Zoe Saldana didn't use her moment to talk more about transgender rights. But on the other hand, she kind of sort of did. And as for anything that addresses our contemporary moment, I think giving the top Oscar award to a movie which talks about the problems of oligarchy and the way it sort of tosses marginalized people to the side is very much to the moment, frankly. And so you don't always have to say it explicitly, folks. It's there in front of you if you bother to look.
Yeah. Well, let's hear from one other quarter here. Quite a few years ago, the host of a different awards broadcast offered a cautionary piece of advice similar to what Mr. Mayor has had to say, but a little bit more explicitly. Let's play that clip, Maestro.
If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and off, okay? So, it's already 3 hours long.
That, of course, is Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes. This is also a moment where I wanted to remind people or tell people that Real Artways here in Hartford has No Other Land, which, as Gene was just saying, had trouble finding a distributor. They're playing it on their screen. They are also playing I'm Still Here, the Brazilian movie that won Best International Feature and whose star was up for Best Actress. They're playing that, and they're bringing back Anora. So they're doing 3 movies a day for the next, at least until Thursday of this week, and so you can catch up on No Other Land and I'm Still Here. And Anora, if you haven't seen it on a big screen, I'm being told that I'm Still Here is also playing in Trumbull once a day, so you can see these things. You know, Vivian, another question that I had, because it was a little bit of a break with format, although I suppose there have been other times it's happened, but I was a little surprised to see Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo out there at the top of the show when I'm kind of expecting a cold open or something like that. For, not back to Shawn's point about singing one verse of something, that wasn't a compact musical opening. It was really quite a while before the actual award ceremony gets started. So I don't know, Vivian, how did you process that?
I mean, I think this was a great moment for musical theater kids. Wicked stands everywhere, and I think and to a certain degree, when I was even thinking about the awards, I was looking at everything. I was pretty certain that Wicked wouldn't win that much because we know that there's a part 2 coming. And so perhaps, and this is, complete conjecture here, perhaps, we want to give them a moment right now since they're not really going to be seen as much. And also, I mean, Cynthia Erivo, Aria Grande, I mean, they're singers, they're performers. This is what they do. And it's such a big stage. So why not?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right that they understand there's a huge fan base out there. They're also pretty sure that it's not going to win many major awards, if any major awards. So this was for those fans. It was like, don't...
Exactly. Exactly. And you have those huge stars. I mean, regardless of how people may feel about Aria Grande as a performer, she is a superstar. So you have to do something with her.
Yeah.
And she's very, they've had a great period of promoting the movie. They're very happy to do it. So this works.
Yeah, no, I thought it worked. I just want to do a few numbers here because Mr. Big Pants, who's producing this episode, he likes numbers. So it was 31 minutes from the start of everything to the first award being given, and that's from a full ceremony. It was 232 minutes long. So that was a long time to go without giving Kieran Culkin the first award. Also, Mr. McPants would like to point out that Adrian Brody is the first person to win the Best Actor award twice without ever losing a Best Actor award. In other words, if he's been nominated twice, he's won twice. And there's some other point that he wants me to make, and I've forgotten what it is. So what we'll do is we'll take a break. We'll come back. I'll probably figure out what that point is, or he'll tell me, and we'll come back with more from this wonderful panel. We got lots more to talk about, and not that much time.
Come on and ease on down the road. Come on, y'all. Ease on down the road. Don't you carry nothing that might be alone. Come on, ease on down the road. I'll pick your left foot up when your right foot's down. Come on, legs keep moving. Don't you lose no...
And we're back. There's some feeling there in the control booth that maybe wasn't the greatest Quincy Jones song that could have been used there last night. Although I would point out that the Grammys already did a Quincy Jones tribute, and they used up some of the really good songs there. So that may have been the reason. Anyway, time to say some thank yous. Our technical producer, as usual, is the maestro, Dylan Reyes. Jonathan McPants is the producer of this particular episode. We're with Shawn Murray and Gene Seymour and Vivian Nabeta. Shawn, I want to just go to a couple of other sort of, not to pigeonhole you as a professional comedian, but I am going to do that anyway. And that is... I should have brought this up when we were talking about the Brody speech, and I'm not the only person to think this. But so Conan O'Brien sets up this idea that if people's speeches go too long, John Lithgow is going to make this very unhappy, disappointed face, which he happily demonstrates from the audience. I think it's a little bit of a callback. Do you remember when Conan hosted the Emmys, I believe, and he had Bob Newhart in this chamber with a limited amount of air, and that the Bob Newhart was going to die if
people don't wrap it up.
If the program ran over. But then, and the Hollywood Reporter writer compared this to kind of not using Chekhov's gun. Brody does go over, and there's no cut to John Lithgow. I mean, I feel like that's a violation of some kind of comedy canon.
No, absolutely it was, but I think it's because when Brody shuts down the orchestra, everyone, the producer were probably expecting like he's going to say something pretty profound now. So let's not make this silly if he says something like really important and this is the big moment that everyone's posting on Twitter or X or Blue Sky now. And then it wasn't that. So then it's like, that was definitely a missed opportunity for that.
Yeah. And then the other thing, I know you like the Ben Stiller thing, which is sort of about production design. And he was on this, elevated stage. They kept getting stuck or going in the wrong direction. Yes. Yeah. So that really grabbed you, right?
Yeah, I thought it was not just purely funny, but it's like it directly ties to production design and its value in Like it's not just like Ben Stiller out here saying a couple funny things. It's like the production design is preventing him from doing this award the way it should be done. And he's just so game for it. Like it was a very physical bit. I love one of the things I love about Conan is whenever he's associated with something, he's going to have a bunch of physical bits. And I love when like it's easy to get an actor to go out there and say a couple lines, but when somebody's game, especially Stiller has been like moved so far from comedy in the last like 10, 15 years, but like he's still game to do something funny especially if Conan asks you to do it, you know?
Yeah, I would encourage people
I thought
go ahead.
I thought it was probably one of the purest cinematic moments of the night. I mean, to me, that was like classic film comedy. The use of space, the whole kind of deadpan juxtaposition of situation and actor. And I thought to myself, couldn't somebody out there get an idea and put Ben Stiller in a whole movie like this? Is that still possible?
I do recommend people look up. In 2012, he and Emma Stone gave out an Oscar together, and it was her first Oscar. And they do this whole bit where she's got all these really flashy ideas about what they're going to do, and he's just he's being her straight man actually, and he does a great job with it. Although one cannot help but notice how much taller Emma Stone is than Ben Stiller, which I was thinking about with that platform thing last night. So we got just a little bit of time left, and I don't know if we can even talk about both of these movies. But Vivian, actually pick one: Emilia Perez and The Brutalist, were I think two movies that came in with a lot of cred, and a lot of sense that these are big swing kind of movies. They're trying to do something really different. There's a real vision here of something. I don't know. Pick one of them and just say what you thought, because neither one of them had a great night last night.
This is where I have to admit I have not seen those two, but I can tell you anecdotally. I will tell you anecdotally, as somebody who hasn't, I think that it certainly felt like The Brutalist. It felt like what an Oscar, when they got nominated and all the buzz around it, it didn't feel surprising once you know what the film is and you've seen the clips. It felt like, oh yeah, well this is what would be nominated. And on the other side of it, it was when you look at Emilia Perez. So I'm kind of cheating and talking about two, even though you said one. If you were to say, as soon when the movie came out, like, oh, this is going to be an Oscar nominated movie, people would say, you are wrong and you're lying and this would never get nominated. So again, when I look at the overall awards, I'm thinking about the spectrum of films, which feels a lot different than in years past.
Yeah,
and again, when I say Amelia, it's not that the quality isn't necessarily there. It's just more of what typically kind of rises to the top. And Gene said it really great. This is a trade award.
Yeah, and Gene, with these, particularly with The Brutalist, and I would have been okay with The Brutalist winning Best Picture. I know not everybody would have been, but to me, in a way, they've never really spelled out their standards or their aesthetic. Yeah. And like even the thing we were saying before about what's the best supporting actor, McPants looked that up. They have very vague guidance about. They just decide in the moment, what that is, And I'm going to use a figure skating or maybe Olympic diving analogy and say, Nora landed all of its jumps and just fine. The Brutalist didn't land all of its jumps, but it was the degree of difficulty was way higher. What it was attempting to do was so gigantic, and to me, that's something that the Academy's never really quite resolved, right? In terms of
that is an excellent analogy. I mean, that whole degree of difficulty versus whether you work within a smaller and more contained environment or a contained set of objectives. I thought that The Brutalist started out wonderfully, and as not just me is saying this, after intermission, you kind of go, huh? And I think that, but still, it made a lunge, it made a reach at something, and and maybe Brody's speech accidentally kind of was an expression of how you can go almost too far for your own good.
Well, yeah, I think the thing about the movie, Gene, is that the movie itself is kind of, the story of the movie and the making of the movie and about what he went through to get that movie made kind of closely parallels the narrative of the movie. The movie is about an architect who wants to take big swings and is having a lot of trouble getting the final cut, so to speak. And of course, this director did eventually get the final cut on this really, really long movie. And yeah, I agree that Adrian Brody's speech felt like the third iteration of this idea that you're going to control your time and you're going to do what you want to do. But I sort of feel like, Gene, if I were going to see a movie with you and then we were going to go out for coffee or some alcoholic beverages afterwards, I'd rather see The Brutalist with you because there's more to talk about. With Nora, we'd go out and we go, well, that was really good. They did everything they set out to do.
I think it's true of both.
Yeah.
I would, yeah. I think it's true of both of them, frankly, Colin. I think, I would go on and on about, again, I would be blabbing about oligarchy and
Right.
and poor
Yeah,
people.
the idea that I would go out for a beer with Gene and he would have nothing to say, I can just, from experience, say that that's not the
I'd
case.
go on in both ones. Yeah, sure.
So,
Why
Shawn,
not?
you may be getting the last word here. I don't know. Do you want to talk about The Brutalist or Amelia Perez or just something else entirely? I'm giving you final cut, Shawn.
This is all I ever dreamed of, Colin. I kind of want to talk about all of it in the sense of like, I think the reason Honora wins, and I think the reason why Amelia Perez had a lot of favor going into this unexpectedly, I think it's because, like, sort of back to Gene's point about this being a trade award. It's like people always talk about like the decision-making process, and it's mainly just who's going to hit the campaign trail the hardest, right? I'm sure Sean Baker was out there being very charming. He's known in Hollywood as like a guy who's always around, always watching movies. He's out at all the parties. Like the reason Ray Fiennes never going to win an Academy Award because he's made a decision years ago. He's like, I'm not campaigning. I'm going on to the next movie. They want to have you shake hands and kiss babies and like drink at their parties. You're not going to do that. So those are the movies they're going to win. I feel like Adrian Brody didn't make any jokes on this entire campaign trail for this movie. He ended up winning the award, but I feel like The Brutalist, so much of the talk of the movie is about like, this is a big serious picture, and it is, but like, I think I would much rather hang around Mikey Madison than Adrian Brody if I'm at a party. You know what I mean? As much as great an actor as Adrian Brody is, so I feel like that's part like what it is. It's like, hey, who's gonna charm us and make us say, you know what, these are both great movies, but and those parties with Sean Baker were a blast, man. I'm gonna pick Honora. I feel like that's what it comes down to.
And with Amelia Perez, which I was late watching it, and so I went through all the kind of weather veining of it. It's a great movie. No, actually, there were these tweets, and that's not so good. And nobody liked it in Mexico. And it's a Frenchman trying to make a movie about a Mexican story, and there's hardly any Mexican actors in it. Yeah, no. And so my expectations were kind of lowered, Shawn. And then I saw it, and I thought, yeah, I guess those are all probably pretty valid criticisms, but actually this movie kind of works. But I thought it was a victim of kind of an outside narrative.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of the things, too, is like why you got to watch as many movies as possible as early. I remember when Everything Everywhere All at Once won, it was like so many people saying, like, see this movie before you get inundated by the discourse, because then you'll not get to enjoy it on its own terms, and you'll have like, is this the best picture ever? It's like, no, it's not the greatest movie ever made, but it's a fun movie, and if you just enjoy it, get the chance to just enjoy it as a fun movie, you'll probably not be so bothered by like all the discourse, because you're like, hey, I didn't have any expectations going into it. I just saw it for what it was.
All right, we have to stop there. Although I will say that happened to me with the movie once. Everybody said, oh, what a great indie picture. And by the time I saw it, I was like, this isn't that good. And that's a terrible song they're singing. And then everybody got mad at me. All right, so we're so lucky to have with us today Gene Seymour, the mayor, and Vivian Nabeta, the queen, and Shawn Murray, who doesn't really have an exact title.
Jester.
The court jester. I was thinking I was going to go there too, but I didn't want you to feel once again defined by that role. All right, we're going to say goodbye, but thanks to everybody who listened and everybody who spoke.